Welcome, Inventor users. In this video today, I'd like to discuss creating basic 2D sketches. So come up here to New, and let's get into Standard IPT Part, and then hit Create. And what we're going to do now is get into the Sketch tab. So up here on the left side, click on Sketch, and we're going to go to Start 2D Sketch. And we see these three orthogonal planes, and you can think of those as a blank piece of paper that you're drawing on. So we'll just pick one of them. It does not matter which one. And you can see now we have a wide variety of options. And in this video, we're not going to talk about all of these things. For right now, we're simply going to focus on this left side of the screen, which is how to create basic 2D sketches, and I'd like to show you how to dimension them as well. In some follow-on videos, we'll discuss a bit more about how to constrain and fully define a sketch, and we'll discuss some specialty commands such as creating patterns and also modifying our sketch, such as moving and trimming things. But to keep the video a reasonable length, let's just focus on how to create basic two-dimensional sketches. So the simplest one to start with would be the simple line command. So if we just click on line and then left click once anywhere on the screen and then move your mouse, let's move my mouse up and to the right and then left click again, we see that we've created a line segment. Now, let's create a horizontal line. So once again, I'm going to click on the line command, and I'm going to come up here and left click once, and I'm going to move my mouse as best as I'm able horizontally across the screen. And if you notice, just below my mouse cursor to the right, it says 0.00 degrees. That's telling me that since I'm moving horizontally, this line is perfectly straight. And then left click again. Now, what if I want to change the dimensions of this line, its length? How do I do that? Well, to change the dimensions, click on the dimension command and then click on your line. And if I do that and move the mouse down, we can see that the current dimension is 0.375 inches. What if I wanted to make this 1 inch? Well, I'm going to left click again, and then let's type in 1 to make it 1 inch long, and you can see that the overall dimension change. Now, what if I want to move this? I don't want to change it, but I want to move its position in space. What I'm going to do now is maybe hit the escape key, then right click and hit OK. Now if I move my mouse over the dimension value and left click, I can move it up or down or even above the line. Here it's below the line, but I can move it above the line. And then left click. And you can see that I have changed the position of the dimension value here. Okay, now a few things to understand about snapping. So let's create some lines again. I'm going to again click on the line command, and I'm going to just create a line here. Now, let's say I want to have another line that begins or emanates from the endpoint of this one I just drew. So what I do is I come down, and notice that when I get my cursor over the end point of that line, notice that's initially yellow, and then it changes to a green circle. That means that you're snapped. You're physically sort of attached to the end point of that line. And if I left click again and then draw, you can see that I have sort of these two line segments that are now joined together. Okay. So let's create a circle now. Let's pan down, start over. Let's create a circle, and when we notice for the circle command, we have a drop-down menu, and we can create an ellipse as well. But for right now, let's just click on circle, the center point command, and click anywhere on the screen. Left click once, and then move your mouse. In this case, I'm moving my mouse down and to the right, and then left click again. And notice that I'm dimensioning the diameter of the circle. And let's say I wanted to change the diameter. So again, left click on dimension, left click on your circle, and again, you can move the dimension to be anywhere you want on the screen. I'm going to move it down here. This looks pretty good. Left click again, and I want to change this to say 0.75 inches. So I'm going to left click, type in 0.75, and then hit OK. And we've created our circle. If you want to create an ellipse, it's basically the same procedure. So we're going to create an ellipse. So the first thing you're going to do is, and you can see that in some cases when you go to create a shape, if you look at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, just below where it says part 3 there, it says select the ellipse center. So it's giving you sort of a step-by-step procedure as to how to create this part. So by selecting the ellipse center, I'm just going to click kind of a random point on the screen and left click once. And then it says select the first axis point. Well, I'm going to just make that up here. And then left click again. And then select a point on the ellipse. So I'm just going to move my mouse around. You can see that that yellow dot is following a point on the ellipse. And I'm going to click here. Click one more time with my mouse, the left mouse button, and then hit escape. And you can see that I've created this ellipse on the screen. Okay. The last one to discuss for right now would be something known as a rectangle, a very basic shape. And you have several ways you could create a rectangle. You could draw a series of 4 lines that pairs of the lines are going to be parallel with each other, of course, and then when they're joined, where they intersect, they have to be at right angles. There's another way that's perhaps a little bit easier, is we have, since a rectangle is so popular as a shape, we have the rectangle command. And you can see there's a few different ways to create rectangles. The most basic one is to use the 2-point rectangle command. Let's try that. So simply left click on the screen, I'm going to move my mouse down and to the right, left click again, and we can see that we have a rectangle. Now, we'll discuss some details in some follow-on videos, but notice when the rectangle was created, we see that these little images, little pictures next to the shape show up. These are known as glyphs, and what they are actually certain constraints that are there to help fully define the sketch. And the constraints are up here on this side of the screen. So again, not to overwhelm you with too much detail, but we'll discuss constraints and why they're so important in a later video, if you will. Okay, so this covers the majority of what I wanted to review today. Now, how do we get out of the sketch? Okay, so when you're done sketching, you want to come up here to the right, and there's this big green check mark, and you want to left click on that once and hit Finish Sketch. And you can see that in my sketch plane, all of my figures, all of my little sketches are in this plane, right? There's everything, depending on what side of the view cube I'm looking on, that's what looks like just a series of straight lines. Okay, but in fact, what I have is a series of 2-dimensional sketches. Now, what if I wanted to get back to where I was and change these sketches around, change the dimensions, move them, add extra constraints? How do I do that? Well, come over here to the right side of the screen, and since we had just one, it's a series of sketches but on one sketch plane. If I come over to sketch 1 here, right click and then hit Edit Sketch, it takes me right back to where I was. And then when you're done, simply click Finish Sketch again. So I hope you found today's video to be both helpful and instructive. So thank you so much for your time and attention.